So if I tell you that someone is a fat cat.
Oh, right, the classic fat cat.
Yeah, exactly. You probably instantly picture this, like, lazy, greedy millionaire, right? Maybe they're sitting behind some massive mahogany desk, smoking a cigar or something.
Totally. It's a very specific image.
Right. But if you take that exact phrase and you translate it literally to an Arabic speaker.
They just picture an actual cat that needs to go on a diet.
Exactly. The millionaire image just completely vanishes. And that vanishing act is actually the entry point into something really profound.
It really is.
Because today we are looking at, well, the hidden operating system of the human mind. Every time you try to grasp something abstract, love, time, power, anxiety, your brain just naturally reaches for a physical metaphor to process it.
It's a fundamental cognitive reflex, really. I mean, we are constantly borrowing from the physical world just to understand the invisible one. And as a translator, spending every day moving between English and Arabic, I see firsthand how those borrowed physical materials completely change depending on where a culture actually developed.
So welcome to this deep dive into the hidden architecture of human thought. Today, our mission is to explore how different cultures construct their realities through metaphors, similes, and everyday idioms.
It's such a fascinating topic.
It really is. So whether you are catching up on the latest in cognitive linguistics, maybe you're studying Arabic, or you're just insanely curious about how language shapes the world around you, this is going to permanently change how you hear everyday phrases.
To give you an idea of how deeply embedded this is in just our modern psychology, consider the 2024 video game metaphor, Fantasio.
Oh yeah, great example.
Right. The entire lore of that game's universe is built on this exact premise. So in that world, magic is literally fueled by anxiety.
Which is wild.
It is. And when the characters need to fight off monsters, they summon these entities called archetypes, which are basically physical combative manifestations that are born directly out of human insecurities.
It's so cool.
It's this brilliant modern pop culture illustration of what linguists call conceptual metaphor theory.
Right, and that theory that was coined by George Lakoff and Mark Johnson back in 1980, I believe.
Yep, 1980.
And it basically argues that human beings are fundamentally incapable of processing abstract struggles without anchoring them to tangible, relatable concepts. Like we say an argument is a war, right, where we attack and defend points.
Or we say time is money. That we spend or waste.
Exactly. So if metaphors are the mental maps we use to navigate reality, that actually leads us to a massive geographical question.
Because the environment provides the raw materials for that map.
Yes. So what happens when two different cultures develop in entirely different physical environments?
Well, you end up with two completely different conceptual universes.
Yeah.
I mean, to really map this out, we need to look at a concept linguists refer to as zoometaphorical mapping.
Oh, I have always loved that term. Zoometaphorical mapping.
It's a great term.
It really is. So for those who don't know, zoometaphorical mapping is the cognitive process where humans project the traits of animals onto other humans to understand complex layered behaviors.
Right. It connects back to what Lakoff and Turner called the great chain metaphor.
Yes, the great chain metaphor. The basic idea is that human psychology is messy, right? It's difficult to define. So we look down the chain of being to animals because we perceive animals as having these isolated, distilled traits.
Like a fox is just sneaky.
Right. And a lion is just brave. We use those simple lower links on the chain to explain the really complicated human links.
And when you look at the provided sources comparing English and Arabic metaphors, you see how heavily geography dictates which animals actually make it onto that chain.
So let's break that down. Let's start with the English language.
Okay, so English developed largely within an agricultural pastoral paradigm.
Right, lots of green fields and farms.
Exactly. The language was born and nurtured in these temperate, fertile farming environments. Consequently, English idioms rely heavily on domestic pets and farm animals.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, in the cross-cultural research sample we are looking at, the dog appears 7 times in English idiomatic expressions.
Wow, 7 times.
And the horse appears 4 times. You see cows, pigs, and chickens constantly serving as the baseline for human behavior because those were the creatures that dominated the visual field of the people building the language.
So the environment dictates the lexicon. But when we flip the script and look at the Arabic language, we are looking at a linguistic architecture built in a completely different climate.
Completely different. Arabic metaphor is profoundly rooted in a desert paradigm.
Right.
The language evolved in this harsh, unforgiving, arid environment where, honestly, survival was the primary daily objective.
You're not looking at cute little farm animals.
Exactly. So the animals utilized to map human behavior in traditional Arabic aren't domesticated farm animals, they are survivalists and predators.
Okay, give me an example from the research.
Well, in that exact same research sample, the camel, which is, the ultimate symbol of endurance and survival in that geography, it appears 5 times in the Arabic texts.
And let me guess, 0 times in the English text.
0 times in English. Instead of cows and chickens, the Arabic conceptual map relies on lions, falcons, wolves, and desert lizards.
Wait, hold on. I want to challenge the weight of this environmental divide for just a second.
Go for it.
So if an English speaker says a colleague, works like a horse, and an Arabic speaker says they work like a camel, which is Yamal Kalbarer, if I have the pronunciation right.
Yamal Kalbara, yes, perfect.
Awesome. So aren't they functionally doing the exact same thing? I mean, you are just taking one beast of burden and swapping it out for a geographically appropriate beast of burden. Does the specific animal actually change the underlying thought process?
I get why you'd think that. Swapping a horse for a camel feels like this neat mathematical exchange. But that assumption completely shatters when we encounter acute cultural dissonance.
Acute cultural dissonance. Okay, walk me through that.
So the specific animal absolutely matters, because you aren't always just swapping one beast of burden for another. Sometimes the exact same animal exists in both environments, but means the complete opposite thing, depending on the cultural lens you are looking through.
Oh, wow. Now that completely derails the one-to-one swap theory. Walk us through an example of that dissonance.
The most striking example, hands down, is the owl.
The owl.
Yeah. If you grew up speaking English, your cultural backdrop includes Greek mythology, right? Where the owl is associated with Athena, the goddess of wisdom.
Right, so you say a mentor is like as wise as an owl.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in traditional Arab culture, the owl is a nocturnal bird of prey, often associated with ruins and isolation. Historically, it was seen as an omen of misfortune. Yeah. So if you take an English text praising a brilliant scholar and literally translate wise as an owl into Arabic, you are doing incredible damage to the author's intent.
Because you are essentially calling the scholar a harbinger of doom.
Exactly.
That is a staggering mistranslation. It's not just slightly off Homer, it is a complete inversion of the intended meaning.
Another really fascinating point of dissonance is the dog.
Okay, because in the English-speaking world, the dog is universally man's best friend.
Right. It is the ultimate conceptual metaphor for unshakable loyalty. But in traditional Islamic and Arabic contexts, while dogs might be kept for hunting or guarding, they have historically been associated with impurity.
So you wouldn't use it as a compliment?
Definitely not. You would almost never use the dog as a glowing positive map for human loyalty in classical Arabic phrasing.
Which brings up the pig as well, right?
Oh, absolutely.
In Western languages, you can use the pig pretty casually to map out negative human traits, like saying a corrupt politician is greedy as a pig or someone is sweating like a pig.
Right. But because the pig is categorically forbidden in Islam, it holds a uniquely repulsive space.
So it just doesn't show up in idioms?
It is entirely absent in any positive or neutral idiomatic usage in Arabic. You simply do not map everyday human behavior onto it because the cultural barrier is just too thick.
Which means translators are constantly walking this crazy high-wire act.
Oh, you have no idea.
Yeah.
Imagine you were staring at a high-stakes business negotiation or like a delicate diplomatic speech. You cannot just translate the words on the page. You have to achieve what the renowned translation theorist Mona Baker calls pragmatic equivalence.
Pragmatic equivalence. So to put that in layman's terms, that means prioritizing what the words are trying to do over what the words actually are?
Precisely. You are translating the communicative effect.
Okay, give me an example of how that actually works in practice.
Well, going back to your opening example of the fat cat.
Right, the lazy millionaire.
Yeah. If an English journalist writes an expose about a fat cat manipulating the stock market, the communicative effect is outrage at wealthy exploitation.
Right.
But since a literal Arabic translation just yields an overweight feline, I have to deploy a strategy called cultural substitution.
So you have to find a creature in the Arabic ecosystem that triggers the same psychological reaction as the English fat cat. What do you substitute it with?
In modern Arabic dialects, We often translate that concept of the wealthy manipulator as a whale or hoot.
A whale! I love that!
It works perfectly, right? In the Arabic conceptual map of the marine world, the whale represents the largest, most dominant, all-consuming creature. It swallows everything in its path.
Wow.
So a whale of money perfectly captures that sense of overwhelming, almost predatory wealth.
That makes so much sense.
Or consider the English phrase raining cats and dogs.
Yeah.
If I translate that literally during a weather report, an Arabic listener is going to assume the apocalypse has begun.
Right, animals falling from the sky.
Exactly. Instead, I use matar gazir, which simply means heavy rain. You just abandon the cultural image entirely to preserve the sanity of the reader.
Okay, but let me throw a massive complication into this idea of pragmatic equivalence.
I'm ready.
That strategy is brilliant for a newspaper article, a weather report, maybe a business contract. But what happens when the text you are translating is considered divine?
Oh, yes.
Because if you are translating the Quran, you surely cannot just casually swap a cultural metaphor like trading a cat for a whale simply because it sounds smoother to an English ear.
You have identified the single most terrifying boundary for any translator.
I can only imagine.
When you are dealing with sacred divine texts, the concept of cultural substitution is strictly forbidden. The rules completely invert.
So you can't swap anything.
No. You cannot substitute a Quranic metaphor with an English cultural equivalent, because doing so injects unintended, localized, and ultimately unholy meanings into a text that is believed to be the literal word of God. The highest imperative is to keep the original metaphor structurally intact.
But wait, even if the target audience has zero cultural context for the metaphor, like even if they don't understand the nuance of a specific desert environment.
The integrity of the original image overrides the comfort of the foreign reader. Full stop.
Wow.
Now, if maintaining the metaphor is structurally impossible in the target language without completely destroying the grammar, a translator is permitted to reduce the metaphor to its literal, non-figurative sense.
Okay, so you just explain what it means.
Right. Or they might convert the metaphor into a simile to make the comparison a bit more explicit, but you never add your own cultural baggage. The linguistic architecture of a sacred text is basically untouchable.
You know, if a translator is absolutely forbidden from altering a metaphor in a sacred text, it really makes you realize how structurally load-bearing these classical Arabic metaphors actually are.
They are foundational.
Yeah, the language isn't just throwing pretty comparisons around it, is engineering a highly specific reality.
Exactly.
And to understand how Arabic builds these unchangeable structures, we have to look under the hood at the mechanics of the language itself. We have to dive into ilm al-bayan.
Yamabayan. It translates to the science of eloquent expression.
Such a great title.
Right. And it is an incredibly vast, mathematically precise field within classical Arabic rhetoric.
And the absolute bedrock of that science is al-tashbih, which translates to simile or comparison. It is the engine that drives Arabic figurative language.
It really is.
Now, classical rhetoricians didn't view a simile as just a sentence, right? They viewed it as a building constructed on 4 distinct pillars.
The terminology used here is beautifully systematic. I'll actually walk you through the 4 pillars.
Please, dear.
The first pillar is al-mushaba. This is the subject, the actual thing you are trying to describe.
So if I want to describe knowledge, knowledge is my first pillar.
Precisely. Then you need the second pillar, al-mushaba bihi. This is the object you're comparing your subject to.
Okay, I'll compare it to a light, so knowledge and light.
Perfect. Now you need the third pillar to explain why you are connecting them. This is waj al-shaba, which is the specific aspect of resemblance they share.
They both provide guidance. Knowledge guides the mind, light guides the eyes.
Exactly.
Okay.
And finally, the fourth pillar is adat al-tashbih. This is the linguistic tool you use to physically connect the first 2 pillars, usually a particle like ka, or mithal, which function just like the English words like or as.
Okay, so assembling all 4 pillars, I would say, knowledge is like a light in its guidance.
There you go.
It was perfectly clear. It leaves no room for confusion. But, and this is what I love here, is where Arabic rhetoric does something cognitively brilliant.
It establishes a hierarchy of eloquence.
Right, based on what you are brave enough to delete.
This brings us to the pinnacle of Arabic comparative language, the tashbih balai.
Which translates to the eloquent simile, right?
Yes, the eloquent simile.
Yeah.
And it achieves its immense power through violent condensation.
It honestly reminds me of a cinematic jump cut in a film.
Oh, how so?
Well, if a director shows a character packing a suitcase and the very next shot is that character walking through an airport terminal, they skip the taxi ride. They deleted the connective tissue.
Right, because you don't need to see the taxi ride.
Exactly. By removing the transition, the director forces the audience's brain to stitch the meaning together. And the Tashbih Bali does this to language. To reach the highest level of eloquence, you don't add more descriptive words, you aggressively strip them away.
You violently rip out the tool of comparison, the like, or eyes, and you completely remove the aspect of resemblance.
You leave only the subject and the object standing right next to each other. So instead of hand-holding the listener and saying, knowledge is like a light in its guidance, you just declare, knowledge is a light.
Alumu nur. The impact of that phrase in Arabic is absolute. By removing the tool, you aren't just making a comparison. You are declaring an undisputed identity.
Another phenomenal example from the sources is the legendary classical poet Al-Mutanabi.
Oh, Al-Mutanabi is brilliant.
He was writing a poem to praise a great leader, right? And wanting to convey that the citizens were completely dependent on this leader for survival, the way desert flora depends on rainfall. He could have used all four pillars. He could have said, we are like plants in our dependence, and you are like the clouds in your generosity. But that is weak. It's too literal. So he uses the Tashbih Balay. He writes, we are the plants of the hills, and you are the clouds.
Nanu nabtu rubawa antaligamo. When you hear that in Arabic, the psychological weight is palpable.
I mean, think about the cognitive strain that puts on the listener. The human brain completely abhors a vacuum. When the word like is missing, the listener is forced to actively fuse the two concepts together.
The poet is basically making the listener a co-creator of the reality.
Yes, you aren't just like the life-giving clouds, you are the clouds. It collapses the distance between the human being and the environment.
And you know what is truly remarkable?
What?
These highly sophisticated, mathematically precise, classical structures, they are not just locked away in some ancient poetry archives. They are alive and breathing in everyday conversational street Arabic right now. People use the mechanics of Tashbih Bali without even thinking about the four pillars, simply because it is how the culture has mapped its reality over centuries.
So we have to look at how this sounds in the modern dialect. Everyday idioms are basically the raw, unpolished data of how a society thinks.
Oh, absolutely. And one of my absolute favorites speaks to the distortion field of human love, specifically a mother's love.
Okay, let's hear it.
The idiom is, the monkey in his mother's eyes is a gazelle. Al-kird bieno mihi gazelle.
The monkey in his mother's eyes is a gazelle. That is so incredibly vivid.
Isn't it?
It captures something we all universally understand, that love completely alters perception. The rest of the society might look at this person and see a clumsy, chaotic monkey, but the mother's cognitive map literally overrides reality. She genuinely sees a graceful gazelle.
It speaks to the involuntary nature of affection. Another brilliant one deals with human compatibility.
Like romantic compatibility.
Or just friendship. When two people get along perfectly, or they're just completely meant for each other, an Arabic speaker will say, a pot that has found its lid. Tanjara walakat gataha.
A pot that has found its lid. That is wonderfully domestic and tactile.
Right? It's not some grand philosophical thing.
Exactly. Instead of talking about abstract soulmates or, invisible romantic chemistry, it grounds the relationship in physical geometry. You can instantly picture the exact, satisfying click of a metal lid snapping perfectly onto a pot. It makes the abstract concept of compatibility feel physically heavy.
And then we have expressions that serve as, like, societal guardrails, summarizing a broader cultural philosophy.
Okay, give me one of those.
For instance, to warn against extremes, we say, excess is the brother of shortage. Azaida kal nakis.
Excess is the brother of shortage. Wow, so the person who overthinks is fundamentally related to the person who doesn't think at all.
Exactly.
Doing too much of something is fundamentally woven into the same destructive family as doing too little of it.
By making excess and shortage brothers, the language personifies them. It gives abstract mathematical concepts a human bloodline, forcing the listener to realize that both extremes will betray you in the exact same way.
This brings us completely full circle back to George Lakoff and the concept of how metaphors are the operating system of the mind.
We don't just speak in these cultural metaphors.
No, we literally use them to navigate our lives. We understand the invisible bond of a marriage through a pot and a lid. We understand the irrationality of maternal love through a monkey and a gazelle. The metaphor isn't just a poetic description of the truth. It is the actual vehicle the brain uses to arrive at the truth.
And once you realize that the metaphor is the vehicle, You begin to understand that learning a new language isn't just about memorizing a dictionary of vocabulary.
Not at all.
It is about downloading an entirely new conceptual map of reality. It changes how you perceive a rainy day, a loyal dog, or an owl in the night sky.
Let's zoom out a bit and look at the territory we've mapped today. We started with the grand cognitive theories of the mind, proving that metaphors are not decorations, they are structural architecture.
Right.
We explored the deep environmental divide, seeing how an English agricultural paradigm clashes with an Arabic desert paradigm. We walked the high-stakes tightrope of translation with Mona Baker's Pragmatic Equivalence, exploring why a translator can swap a fat cat for a whale in a newspaper, but is absolutely paralyzed from making that same swap in a sacred text.
Stakes couldn't be higher there.
And finally, we uncovered the incredible psychological power of the Arabic tashbih ballet, the eloquent simile that forces our brains to collapse two different things into a single, undeniable reality.
It really is a profound shift in perspective.
It is.
And to lock that shift in, I want to leave you with a final thought experiment to mull over today.
Ooh, I love a good thought experiment. Let's hear it.
The next time you find yourself using a familiar, comfortable idiom, like saying someone is working like a dog, or they're as brave as a lion, stop and ask yourself what specific historical environment birthed that phrase.
Okay.
And then challenge yourself. If you had to invent a brand new metaphor for courage or loyalty today, using only the materials from your immediate modern environment, your office cubicle, your smartphone, your daily commute through heavy traffic, what would that metaphor be?
Oh, that's brilliant. I suppose in the modern corporate paradigm, you could say someone is as brave as a reply-all email.
Yes, exactly.
Or as loyal as a highly curated algorithm. It really forces you to realize that we are still actively building the operating system of the human mind, one comparison at a time.
We never stop building it.
Thank you for taking this deep dive into the sources with us. Keep questioning the words you use, keep looking for the hidden maps, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.